Hey, it's Liz from No Trace. I have a ton of selvage edges from making wax wraps and napkins and lots of stuff here in my little shop. And so I'm always looking for creative ways to put my selvage edges to good use. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to turn selvage edges into a cute little drawstring bag. So let's go. This finished dimensions of this little bag are 4.5 inches wide and about 6 inches tall. I'm going to be using a whole bunch of my selvage edges in shades of blue and purple. And I'm also going to be using 2 scraps of fabric for the liner of my little bag. These measure 5.5 inches wide and 7 inches tall. And all of these measurements are in the description box below this video, so you can click in there to snag them. The first thing I'm going to do is start pulling out edges that are going to be long enough for my bag. So I need them to be at least 7 inches tall. And once I have several, I'm going to start sewing them with the right sides together over at the machine. I'm sewing my first 2 selvage edges together, and I'm going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance for all of these seams. All right, these first 2 are joined together. I'm just going to take a moment and press them open at the front, and I'm also going to press the back seam open. And then I'm just going to keep joining more selvage edges onto this first pair. So I'll be right back. Okay, I've got enough selvage edges sewn together to cut it down to 5.5 by 7. So now I'm just going to take a minute and get it to the right measurement. And then I'm going to go through these same steps with more selvage edges and make another panel. So first I'm going to cut it to 7 inches tall. I'll save this, obviously, for something else, for a future project TBD that you'll be able to see on here, hopefully. All right, 7 inches tall. And then I'm going to make it a little bit, I think it's a little wider than I need. So I want it to be 5.5 inches wide. So I'm just going to trim a little bit right here. And as usual, I'm saving my tiny bits of thread and fabric. I sew with organic cotton fabric, and these natural fibers can be composted or repurposed for other projects. So save your little bits. All right, I have my 2 outer panels. They're both cut to the same size. I got my 2 inner panels. What I'm going to do next is place these right sides together and sew them along 3 sides with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Both the outer panels that are all quilty and my inner pieces. I'm not using any pins to hold my pieces together, but of course if you want, go for it. And I am going to back stitch at the beginning and the end. Okay, you really don't want to skip this next step. I'm going to take a moment and I am going to press open the seams along the sides for both the selvage edge outer panels and also for the inner fabric. So just get in there with the iron or even just with your fingers, and you want to press those side seams open so they lay nice and flat. Now I'm going to turn my inner fabric right side out. I'm going to take a moment and push out those corners. Then I'm going to put the inner fabric inside the outer fabric, which is still wrong side out. And I want to line up these side seams with each other and pin them together. All right, I've pinned the side seams together, and I also added a few more pins. So now I'm ready to sew. I'm going to start my top seam here about 1.5 inches away from one of the side seams. And I'm going to get all this fabric under my presser foot and I'm going to sew with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. It's a little bit fussy, so just take a minute and make sure everything is in place. Looks good. Here we go. All right, I've sewn around the top edge, but I did leave an opening of a few inches. So I stopped my seam about 1.5 inches away from each side of one of my side seams. So now I can turn it right side out. I'm just gonna use my little opening and gently pull the whole thing right side out. I've got my handy dandy chopstick on standby. I'm gonna wanna push out these bottom corners of my outer layers really well. So now it looks like this, and I'm gonna push the inner layers inside the outer layers. And then I'm gonna press this top edge so that it lays nice and flat, especially right here where we left an opening in the bag. If you have a little sleeve board to iron with, this might be even a little bit easier, but this isn't really too bad. I'm just kind of ironing on the inside here, and I want to make sure this folded edge is really nice and flat. Now I'm going to sew along the inside edge about 1/8 inch away from the top edge, and I'm starting my stitches near the side seam. I'm just going to go all the way around. All right, I have this first seam done, and now it gets a little bit tricky because I want to sew another row of stitches that is 1 inch away from the top edge. So I'm going to once again get this under my presser foot. I'm going to find my 1 inch mark on my Juki over here. And again, I'm going to start near the side and line it up. And I'm just going to use that 1 inch line to try to make a nice straight line all the way around my bag. All right, second row of stitches is done, and it's a little less noticeable on the outside, but using a matching thread is a good idea for this. Now I'm going to do one last row of stitches here on the inside to make a channel for my drawstring, and that's going to be 1/2 inch away from this row of stitches. So let's go one more time around. All right, I have my stitches in place for the channel for my drawstring, and next I am going to seam rip right along the side seam, just in between that channel. Oh, it's right here, so that we can get a drawstring into the channel that we sewed. So I'm just going to get my seam ripper and just cut the stitches that are in between the 2 rows that I just made at my machine. I'll be right back. All right, I've made a hole on each of the sides of my bag, which I'm sure you can't see at all on the video, but it's there. The next step is to thread some cording through there to make the pulls like I have on this one. You could make your own cording using a little bias tape maker, which is what I did on these little bits of selvage edge. For this bag, I'm just going to be using some organic cotton cording. I'm going to use probably about a yard. I'm going to get one of my safety pins and pin it on to one side of the cording. So this is about 16 inches of cording. I basically cut a yard or so in half. And then I am going to thread the safety pin into the opening. Let me show you a better view here. All right, I have a safety pin on one end of this cording, and now I am going to thread the safety pin into the opening I left on the side. And this is why it's important to press the seams open, press those seams nice and flat because it makes threading the safety pin through a lot easier. So I'm just gonna go and thread this all the way around back out where I started. So give me a second. Okay, I got my safety pin all the way around. Now I'm going to tie these two ends together, and I'm going to take the other half of the cording, which is here, and I'm going to thread it through in and out of this opening. So I'll be right back. It is all done. Hey, if you're looking for another project to do with your selvage edges, I'm going to link to another video right here, so check it out.